and dogs and bent yellow nails on the long driveway up, and the car caught without taillights in a public place has 21 days to fix itself. This is a poem for Dave Scanlon, who it's about. It's a docu-poem. It's called UFO. It's an example of synchronicity. Sitting here in my parked Toyota at rest, listening to some radio show, and the interviewee claims that after years of research, he's proved conclusively that aliens have invaded the planet, taking possession of our pet cats and dogs. Just then, just as the interviewee is becoming rabid, Dave drives up in his freshly battered car, parks, rolls down his window, and with a slow, difficult movement caused by a pendant neck brace, explains dolefully how he's been the victim of 2 hit-and-run vehicle accidents in 1 short week. Hearing this from the back seat, Dave's pet dog, with a worried look at the driver's door, sticks his long brown snout out and very adeptly locks the lock. Dave doesn't notice this, and by the time he drives away, the mad scientist on my radio subsides to silence. This next poem was in this magazine last fall, and it's called Resolutions. I am not going down to the lake. I will not light bonfires to the depth of winter. I will not dance to the songs of the ancestors. He blessed a corner of my property, there beside the doghouse. He blessed it with smoke and his famous smile. Later, another new year, he shattered his woman's skull and smoked up the room with bits of brain and gunpowder. I will not burn sweetgrass by my doghouse. I will not bless strangers before I bless myself. I will not drink water if it is just a ceremony. I will not love your body in some dull ritual. I will not stand so naked on the cold, cold morning. I will speak the truth as it comes to me, occasionally, like last night's falling stars. Gargoyle Street. This is for Norman Meyer. He's the fellow that was killed as he drove his empty van into the Washington Monument, claiming it was full of dynamite. On Gargoyle Street, I once dreamed of rice fields or wheat fields or Micmac or Ojibwe or silence and the long night in the rural route, but never of this. The stock and bondage markets grind on, the entire temple desolated, and the young women in the cafes are either fat or suspiciously balding. I am out of cigarettes and cannot purchase any, having foolishly forgotten my right hand at home. So numberless and destitute in the marketplace, forgetfulness. My mind fails me these coffeeless mornings, and these tiny pills from Nero Goliath MD do nothing, nothing. Oh, Gargoyle Street, your charisma fails me. In the center of new ball complex, your maze bores me. You are a dangerous place for a street. But you are everywhere now, irresistible, balding and decrepit, singing songs of some Zion, a Zion long buried in the avalanche of hideous dialectic, the side street of forced conflagration. Oh, weep for thee. The few prophets who remain are so small, with only frail, dinky toy microphones, and our brown, sullen mother bears a burden too immense, caked in excrement called civilization, too immense for sleep or continued process, too immense for the simple myth of chaos. Hey, Gargoyle Street! Nero composed this tune. Hitler tapped his leather feet, and suddenly Hiroshima applauded. Canto. Waite's News, July. The hot, still air fills the narrow interior of Waite's newsstand. It is near midnight, forest fires rampant in the region, and the lake is so stiff and warm that fragile, pin-legged insects traverse its width-scape from southern to northern shore deep in dense July, and the hot air fills the narrow interior of one small matchbox newsstand coffee counter, the waitress with the temper skitters from sink to pot, the coffee thick as night and equally as hot. Waiting. A white dog on white snow. The snow-white Toyota waiting. The ferryman in his small shelter by the long dock on that famous river. It snows lightly. In the Rainbow Cafe, the orange of the ancient waitress's makeup melts winter with the loud sound of soap opera. Through the window, he sees the waiting ferry slowly fill the picture. Poor table manners. The starving are becoming aware of us. The starving with pustulous eyes and countable ribs are walking toward us, toward the Safeway store. The starving now see us complacent, eating mandarin oranges and beefsteak, see us complacent, yawning whiskey, see us complacent through the double-edged miracle called television. The starving and their wilted children are crossing the ocean where some god has split it. They are renting the house next door. It is your turn to have them over for dinner, the starving who are trudging closer. Fish Blood. This is from a long poem called The Dead Man's Float, and it's about my hometown, White Rock, on the coast. In the old gray crab shack below the deadly railway bridge, Alex and I gathered slimy, wide-eyed cod's heads, while the crab fishermen, ignoring us, ate their lunches. After enormous toil with dull Boy Scout penknives, we extracted the staring eyes and impaled them on big sharp hooks. Were dancing like translucent ping-pong balls. They were supposed to attract mud sharks, dogfish, from their grimy green depths. After no luck and much drizzle, we watched a man who said he was going to catch dogfish, and first, using 4 lines, he caught 40 Chinese bullheads. Then, bending, he dissected their frantic, oil-slick writhing into 300 or 400 obscene, bleeding chunks, which he scattered religiously on the groaning water of Semiahmoo Bay. And the man said, this always brought the black and paper-skinned mud shark to the top. And in the blank drizzle at 4 p.m. it did. And the man cut the 3-foot shark he caught into a myriad of square bright red chunks, and he baited several star-shaped steel crab nets with this, and set out all in a military row over the side of the boat dock into the seaweed bed where the slow crabs live, and he said, this always brings them to the net. And it was a war at 4, bobbing on the stained dock in smoky brown rain. In 1955-56, TV was just barely around, and it was black and white, and everything in my memory seemed to be black and white then, and this poem's called Black Poem. I dreamed of my father, young and thin, of how black his car was in 55, how black his hair, raven and oil-slick Vaseline and weekend Brill cream. I dream of my father, of how I could not imagine his copulation, of how I could not imagine copulation then, small, contained by suspenders and crew cut, filled with that memoryless locomotion of young child learning, of fathers tall and black smoke long across the gray industrial end, the meat factories with their cacophonic carcass scent spread like death or old mustard upon our somnolent suburb, while father in his black socks, most easily seen by me, mounted his black car on its asphalt, and searched out my mother from deep in the twinkling jungle of a Woodward store. Yes, I dreamed of my father, young and thin, a dapper man without a grin, and my tiny anger growing even then, as with keyhole saw he cut a tiny plywood dog and planted it sullenly on the lawn, memorial to my live dog, dead, Goldie deep in the flower bed, run over by transit in 54, 20 feet from Dartwood door. One end of the beach. This is from the White Rock poem again. The less often used Campbell River end of the beach, near Iron Railway Bridge. Where looking out at low tide, all could see the wreck of a nameless black barge, where an eon of children sensed pirate ghost and ornate treasure chest in possible collapsing tunnels just beneath strange Oak Island sand surface. Spectral mythologies plotted for this grounded, then burnt and reburnt, barnacle-laden black rib cage, abandoned, its ribs the small dark dot on summer postcard. The less often used Campbell River end of the beach, near the Indian reservation, where looking out at high tide, all could see the many waves quavering at autumn, like a billion gray dunce caps, a vision of school returned. Here at the last Mutual Improvement Association Wiener Roast. Labor Day, 1966, when Velma Weir scraped her knee on a submerged, barnacle-ridden rock while swimming through the dunce caps. And the blood reminded some of us of a watercolor sunset, a sunset on summer, gritty wieners in the sand, old earache wind returning, leaving the bay an empty bowl. Canto. From a man who lost his mouth to surgery. The missing movements of my lips, oceanic engaged in deepest kiss, a flotsam of gently twined tongues. Luigi, Harry, Mike, and Barry, eaten by water bodies, removed by cold lake as bait is removed by swift fish, as food is removed by mouth, as mouth was removed surgically, snip, 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 snip. The missing grinding of rush hour teeth, this ghost of smiling jaw still there, mysticulation of air by air. This is a poem that kind of goes along with the resolutions poem I read earlier. Beyond the suicide, for me no way ka mi ke ni, of the Ojibwe nation. Here we have the grainy but static manifestation of the perfect woodsman as he clutches his cornucopia of hissing hubric fruit. Here the beloved suicide smiling from ear to missing ear so suddenly headless, yet deep in dream beyond the scrambled brain ceiling, listening for the dull drum of some disturbed vision of grouse, muscles sore, head so very light and no true mirror or hope of examination, only the hollow, brainless thought, brains disassembled, embedded in drywall or yellow sponge, finally deep in some septic of piss and pine sol. Your false remembrance of murdering everything, of breaking the children's colorful toys, of living after we all had died, and you have become the bright tooth knocked out unwillingly, the good song on paper burnt up in a drunken fire. For you we view the night stars and blow smoke to the house of summer and the stark plain of winter, to the bed of the sun and to its morning rising, to you, bone powder beyond the quadrants of this green bowl that holds us. This is a letter to a friend who lives in Toronto.
Tim, we're going to just hold it.
Okay. Great.